Hello, everyone. I'm your host, Michael Whitehouse. This is the Conference 21 Weekly Roundtable. Today, our guest is Rick Cram. I believe we're also going to be joined by Daniel Greenwolf, unless he just sent me a message saying he can't make it. Internet issue. So, our guest today is Rick Cram. This is why I schedule 3 guests, so that at least one of them makes it. So, we're going to be doing a one-on-one show with Rick today. And his topic is going to be positive and productive responses to frustration. But first, we'll start with the usual introductory sort of things. Of course, this is all tied into Conference 21, which is a virtual conference that includes dozens of fantastic speakers talking about all kinds of great things and great chances to connect and network. And that event is May 21st to 23rd. And we are still looking for additional great speakers, in which you can go to the link, which I am about to find and click on. Here we are. There we go. You can go to speaker.conference21.com, and that is how you can fill out the application. But let us meet our guest. Rick has been on the roundtable a couple times, and if you were at Conference 21 in February, you will have seen him there, but here he is again. So for those who have not yet met Rick Cram, tell us about yourself.
Thank you so much, Michael. Good to be with you again, and hello, glad you're here with us. So let me share a phrase with you that I heard not too long ago. Change exhaustion. Can you relate to that, especially perhaps over this past year? The leadership development director for a major bank said that to me before a program that I put on for them, Plan to Be Your Best as You Navigate Change, because she said, our people are experiencing change exhaustion, and with that comes frustration, having a harder time making decisions, not being as productive, not being as happy. The communication is breaking down, the teamwork is breaking down. And there was one change after another and a tremendous amount of stress and anxiety, making it harder to lead themselves and others through these changes. And that's what I've been addressing. I found after consulting to some hundreds of companies that I found that the people who plan to be their best navigate change more successfully. And it is all about having a plan, being very intentional, and knowing what it means to be your best, as well as how to bring the best out of others. So that's what I do as a consultant, as a facilitator, and as a strategist. And so that's what we'll drill into a little bit deeper in just a few minutes.
All right, very good. And also one thing I want to share is this new, so what you were saying, I didn't type what the next link was going to be. I have a new link. So some of you may be aware I do a daily motivational podcast, which I hopefully typed in correctly, which I now have a newer, better link, which is morningmotivation.fun, easy to remember and easy to find. And it puts a positive message. So folks like Rick can help you with actually making the plans and the strategy and the thinky aheady part. And I'm good for the rah, 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 yay part. And both parts are very important. So morningmotivation.fun will get you the rah, 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 yay. Although it's not all rah, rah. There's some ideas in it as well and some things to think about and share. But Rick, I believe you brought a topic with you today, which is positive and productive responses to frustration, which is, and before I get to this, one thing I wanted to share is we think a lot about, since COVID, things have been really difficult, or since COVID, there's been a lot of change. And I think we forget sometimes that before COVID, things were pretty difficult and there was a lot of change too. It's not like, everything was just smooth sailing for the last 20 years and then COVID just sort of messed it all up. There were a couple challenges and a few clouds on the horizon before a worldwide pandemic tossed everything upside down. So this is a hot topic today, yesterday, and tomorrow.
To your point, I was talking to Bill Fine, the former general manager of WCVB TV and a former high school student of mine, and he said a major challenge such as a pandemic has a unique way of shining a light on other pre-existing problems. Mm-hmm. Perhaps those of you who are watching can relate. I'm just curious, with you, Michael, is there a particular challenge that's been more frustrating since the pandemic has set in for you?
Well, the pandemic, the biggest challenge has been child raising stuff. So if I didn't have a 6-year-old to navigate through the ever changing schedule of school and all that, I don't think it would be quite so difficult, because honestly, I had more problems before the pandemic than during. Because before I was kind of stuck. I've been thinking about a motivational speech I may put together about how I didn't so much grow up in privilege, but I also didn't grow up in want. I grew up in mediocrity. So when you're in privilege, that gives you some assets and resources. When you're in want, you're hungry. You're like, I don't want to be poor anymore. I want to be. But when you're just kind of, then you have neither of those things. And I was sort of in that good enough, like things weren't great, but they weren't terrible. And so the pandemic just flipped everything over, and suddenly I had to reevaluate everything. But that change exhaustion thing you mentioned is definitely spot on, because everything is flipped over. Everything is new. Everything is in the stretch zone. Nothing's in the comfort zone. And it's death by 1,000 cuts. Nothing's really hard individually, but there's 1,000 of them. And suddenly you get to the point where like, why is my brain not braining? Why I'm sleeping enough. Why am I still tired? It's just that constant nudge that wears you out.
And the why, the answer to the why is that emotional response we have to all of that, as well as an increased constant level, especially this past year, of cortisol, the stress hormone. When we wake up in the morning, even after what seems like a full night's sleep and we're tired, that's cortisol work. When we're having a hard time being as creative as we want to be, or relating to other people as we ordinarily would or wish we would, that's cortisol at work. It is actually a toxic chemical, and we've all been experiencing it such high chronic levels. So that's why I think what you're saying, what you're experiencing, Michael, and maybe those of you who are experiencing that as well, isn't this the case? When we have change exhaustion and those difficulties, what we really want is to be free from those, so we can be our best in our relationships, in work, in the things that we want to enjoy in life. And that's all been so much more challenging, because change has been challenging everything this past year.
And I think actually, so Daniel Greenwald was supposed to be with us. He's having internet issues. He actually just shared this comment that popped up here. And I think one other factor that kind of reminds me of is everything is, so he said, I could certainly use some positive, productive response to frustration right now. Sorry, folks, as I fight with my internet demons. And one thing too is now everything is internet based. Like there's no fallback to something that might just work. And the internet is reliable except when it's not, and computers work except when they don't. And all technology is a little unreliable sometimes. And so when suddenly everything you're doing depends on these, inscrutable internet gods, you can kind of understand why peasants of the old days would make sacrifices to the gods for the good harvest, because you kind of want to be like, so what do I need to sacrifice to my computer to make this frickin' Zoom call work? Because this one's so important, I need to be there, and it's not connecting. What's going on? I think that sort of adds that underlying. You could always have gotten in a car accident on the way to an important meeting, or you could always get sick or whatever. But there's something about technology failures that have an additional level of frustration to them, because they're just so arcane.
Speaking of an issue with a car, true story from Texas, not too long ago. There's an old lady, well into her 80s, coming out of a grocery store. And as she's approaching her car, she looks at it and realizes the windows are not only down a little bit, but some smoke is coming out from inside, up through the top of the windows. And she notices that the car is running, and there's loud music. The closer she gets to it, there's loud music inside, along with 4 young men. Here she is in Texas, late 80s. What does she do, of course, but puts down her groceries as she's gotten closer to the car, reaches into her purse, pulls out a pistol, aims it at the car, and yells out, "Get out of my car and run for your life." The 4 doors blow open, more smoke pulls out. Now she can hear the music glaring. The 4 boys bolt all in one direction. So she is trying to calm herself down now at this point. She's got her car back. The smoke is clearing. She gets inside, puts her groceries inside, turns down the radio, and starts to pull out of the parking lot to go to her home. And as she's driving along, she quickly realizes it's not her car. So she ends up turning around, drives into town, takes her a few minutes, goes into the police station, walks up the steps, and she's greeted by the sheriff. And she's trying to still calm herself down, breathing hard and feeling pretty bad about herself. And she starts to explain to the sheriff exactly what happened. He starts to laugh. And she says, "Why are you laughing?" And he ends up pointing down the hall, and there in another office are those 4 boys saying that they just got carjacked by a little old lady. True story. And it ends up being an example of how in a frustrating situation, we don't always necessarily behave exactly as we wish we might. Mm-hmm. So with that in question, let me ask you, if I can share my screen, Michael.
Sure.
Let me offer this question. How do you respond to frustration? And let me present it for you this way. I'm going to see if this works, and let me know if there's any issue as I'm progressing. Do you see this slide, Michael?
Yep, there it is.
How do you respond to frustration? And one of the reasons why I wanted to touch on this is because lately, more than even several months ago, some of my clients and in some of the programs that I've put on lately, this has been a hot topic. Here's a few quotes that I've heard.
As it seems like, did my wife call you last night to say you should talk about this?
I won't acknowledge that. I won't admit to it, Michael.
I can neither admit nor deny.
So we're frustrated. One person said it plainly. Another person said, "This is very stressful. It's coming to an end, but it's not coming to an end." Another person said, "This is irritating. I'm done, but I just keep plugging away." And actually, therein lies the challenge. How do we plug away? So let me share this thought with you don't you love it when a great actor comes out with a great quote like this? Expectation is the mother of all frustration. And let me jump right into a solution that actually came out of a discussion earlier this month with one of my programs where we were talking about the whole person. What we're experiencing, especially with the pandemic, it's a whole person experience. The professional side of us, social, emotional, psychological, physical, and spiritual. And when it comes to psychologically, for starters, and even emotionally, this one person shared an exercise that she walks herself through. Lisa, very smart, one of the wisest people I know. And this is something that we will read about in a number of different articles on the same topic as well. But she would take that point about frustration and say, generally, whatever is frustrating usually is an external source. Frustration comes from, in one hand, an external source, but internally, it's because we have certain expectations. So she would go through this exercise, sometimes just in her thoughts and her words, sometimes writing it down. I'm frustrated because blank. Go ahead and name it. Blank shouldn't be this because here's that expectation that is not being met. Number 2, I would prefer it if this is what you fill in the blank. And then here's the good part, what's both productive and positive. Here's what I can do about it. We might have expectations, but we can't control everything except how we respond to it. So that's part of what I wanted to bring up so that we could discuss this and think it through in terms of what are those things such as that we can do to start to respond in a positive and productive way about frustration. Just curious, Michael, initial thought?
Yeah, no, that's a great concept. And I was half joking when you brought that up, but so, last night, my wife and I got in I'd say fight, but that would imply that it was both of our faults. It was pretty much all my fault. I got frustrated over, sometimes you get frustrated over the initial event, but the initial event's not important. It's that triggers to this, which triggers to this, which triggers to a bigger thing. And it was a little thing. I'd asked her the night before if she could pick up cat litter, and because we were in urgent need, and if you have a cat, you understand what that means. And she said, "Oh, can I do it tomorrow?" And I'm like, "Okay, yeah, sure, tomorrow." And in my head, I'm thinking we really should have gotten it yesterday, but I guess it can wait one more day. And she, not being in the room, was like, "Oh, I'll do it tomorrow if I can." And then that night, last night, I'm out running around doing things. I'm busy. And I'm like, oh, I wonder if she did that. Let me send her a text message. Hey, did you get around to getting the cat litter? She's like, no, I didn't. I'm like, oh, what do you mean you didn't? I was counting you to do. You said you're going to do it. And, complete overreaction. I ended up getting it myself. It did not impact my life. But there's so much else swirling around that the one little trigger point hits. And I think often for people, I think we apologized. And if not, if she's watching now, sorry. But I recognize that it wasn't about her not doing what she said she's doing. It wasn't about it wasn't about cat litter at all. And I think so often that seems because our limbic brain is like, roar, anger, smash, deal with this. And if you don't think about it further, you're like, why am I getting upset about this? This is stupid. Why am I upset about this stupid little thing? Why am I still upset 15 minutes later when I realize like there's so much going on that when there's one thing that I thought was dealt with that suddenly wasn't, that's what got me upset was I've got the Jenga blocks all stacked up. And then I find out that one was where I thought it isn't. I'm like, oh, I was counting on that block to be right there.
You're counting on it. There's that expectation.
Yep. Yeah.
And you said a key word twice, triggers. We all have our triggers. And sometimes a trigger might have to be sparked and it has nothing to do with what's being discussed. It could be a frustration somewhere else, but it comes out this way. But we have triggers, but the good news is there's a plan for that. And it comes down to being intentional. And it comes down to two things I'd say for starters. One is that it's something that each of us have a responsibility to. There's another quote I was looking at recently regarding, and I use this term about our duty to take responsibility into our own hands. Some of the frustrations of my clients or people who have attended some of my programs lately is not only their frustration, but the frustration of the people that they're leading. And they're not sure what they can do to either help them. And in some cases, they're trying to help, but to no avail. Partially because some of these people are stuck, which is completely human, completely normal. It really is. And yet we have to acknowledge that we don't control. We can't control everybody. We can help give them tools, but it's up to each of us. We do have a duty, a responsibility, an ability to respond when we do think about specific things that we can do, such as, and something that I've been more excited about lately. I had my 7th knee surgery about 1.5 years ago.
How many knees do you have?
What's that?
I said, how many knees do you have? You have 7 surgeries.
Actually, maybe I should say I have one real knee and the other is not. It's an artificial knee. I had a total knee replacement 22 years ago, and this was a partial revision. They removed and replaced that hard plastic polyethylene plate between the two titanium implants, and they removed the lining of the joint, which is synovial fluid, and that grows back. But apparently what has also grown in abundance is scar tissue. So I'm having some problems with that, and hopefully that'll clear. But it means pain and frustration. And one of the things I'm focusing on and redoubling this is what I eat. Have you heard about psychobiotics, Michael? I've
not heard about psychobiotics.
I was actually just introduced to that yesterday by a doctor down in Key West during a Zoom meeting. And it's about the connection between what we put in our gut and how our brain deals with stress,
I heard the concept,
with frustration, even with depression. So the more I'm finding, and it's very the kind of diet that is smart when it comes to thinking about foods that factor into this psychobiotic dynamic is very close to the Mediterranean diet. And there are some differences, and there are probably different people that have different recommendations on it, but more fish, actually shellfish like mussels and scallops and shrimp. a lot more vegetables, for example. But the more we sort of peel back the layers on not only understanding frustration and how we respond to it, the more we see as part of a plan for that, things that we can do, including what we eat. So one of the things that means for me is less dark chocolate. But I've got to have some every day. But let me go ahead and list off just to, go ahead, Michael.
Yeah, no, I was saying I heard dark chocolate was a good thing in some places.
Yes, yeah.
My wife was on a diet that I've taken some of the best parts of last summer. That part of it was a square of dark chocolate a day.
Yes, that's exactly what I do.
Mm-hmm.
Gotta have it. Some legumes, nuts. I love pistachios. And I have a handful or more every night because I'm reliant. So, but if we think about that whole person response to stressors, triggers, challenges, such as especially during this pandemic, and change, exhaustion, change, frustration. If we think about each of the different parts of ourselves, that professional self, social self, and so forth, the more we can find ways to actually help be more both positive and have productive responses to it.
Mm-hmm.
So let me ask you another example of how you've responded to a frustrated experience or time. What else comes to mind?
Let's see, frustrated experience or time. Didn't realize there'd be a test.
Let me share this thought with you. I was actually talking with. I had a chance to had a long conversation with my orthopedic surgeon, fantastic doctor, David Mattingly at the New England Baptist Hospital. He's done great things for me, and he said that he made this point. I don't worry about it, and I don't get frustrated about it if I have no control over it. He said, I learned that a long time ago. And that goes back even to the exercise that Lisa had shared with me. If we hone in on those expectations and those things that we can't control, then if we can't control it, then we can sort of right ourselves, both emotionally, perspective-wise as well, and think about, all right, we can't control that, so any energy I put into that is going to be wasted energy. It's not going to produce the response. If we continue to try to do something and have more expectations over something we can't control, more frustration will follow. What's that line about if people who, or someone who might keep on trying the same thing to get different results? Is it the definition?
Insanity? The definition of insanity is trying the same thing, expecting different results. Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
Well, I mean, go ahead.
And one thing, as you're thinking about that, as I was thinking about it, oftentimes when I get most frustrated and thrown off is when it comes from an unexpected direction. I think about, when I'm doing karate training, and of course, when you're in a stance and you're set up to fight this way, and then something hits you from there, you're not set up. And actually, I took a I can't remember the name of the discipline. It was another martial arts style, and he emphasized the concept of strong line and weak line. So if I'm punching straight at you, that's the strong way. If you try to block that, then it's force against force. Not gonna work. But when you block the weak side, which is from the side. You put a tiny amount of force on the fist, and now it's going next to you instead of at you. And I find that happens in life very often. Is if I'm ready for something and I'm geared up for it, then I can totally, I'm strong side. I'm ready to handle whatever. Whereas with the cat litter thing, I was focused on what I was doing and everything I was doing. And suddenly this thought, and it wasn't even external, it was internal, thought popped into my head. Oh, I wonder if that got done. And it didn't get done. And I didn't have my attention focused to it. So it sort of hit from the side I wasn't expecting. And like a few weeks ago, I looked out my back deck. There's a shed in my backyard. And I discovered that the wind had blown the shed somehow about 2 feet over so that it was now tilted and needed to be fixed immediately. It was torquing. And I looked at it, I said, that's not right. We should do something about that. This is a kind of big deal. This shed needs to be fixed. Like my morning is suddenly going to be rearranged around the shed, but I was ready for it. I had the time. I wasn't focused on other things. I wasn't distracted. And so I saw it as that looks like a fun little project. And I get to feel very, manly fixing something around the house, which I don't usually do because my wife's so much more handy than me. But I got to, focus on that. But it came on from the front. I was in a place to receive that. Whereas other times, tiny little things, my email app won't open or whatever. And I wasn't ready for that. I was doing this and this. I wasn't ready for that thing over there. And that the blindsiding is, you're psychologically, your shields are pointed this way and the attack comes from that way. And you're just.
Yes. So to your point, especially regarding the martial arts example, which is excellent, in effect, you were intentional about it. You had expected reactions depending upon how the energy or force is coming at you. And isn't that a plan? Mm-hmm. You've got a plan. And basically, that's one of the things that I do to help people. When you have a plan in place, you're predetermining how you're going to react and respond to a host of situations, both good and challenging. Thinking through consequences, thinking ahead intentionally, planning ahead gives us the ability to better mitigate when those expectations are disappointed. And that happens. It's part of business. It's part of life.
And of course, if your plan anticipates more of those unexpected things, because technology failures, the failure may be unexpected, but technology failures as a group are expected.
Yes.
So, if you make a robust plan, as it sounds like it's kind of what you do, then less of those things are going to blindside you because your area of awareness is going to be broader than just straight in front of you.
So PLAN and BEST are acronyms for the 8 primary leadership and planning strategies. P stands for prepare, L stands for listen, A stands for accept. And it's not just about accepting challenges or accepting change. It's accepting a number of other things that really go deeper in terms of helping to be our best and to navigate those challenges. One of those, let me offer 2 ideas of things to accept. One is that we all have our preset expectations, perspectives towards whatever we're experiencing. Mm-hmm. And it's important to acknowledge that, to understand them. But also another thing to accept is that other people have their own unique perspectives and ways of responding to virtually the very same thing. We have so many commonalities between us, but a tremendous number of unique qualities going back to how we were taught. And I think you and I had this conversation before. There's so much formative work that takes place in our first 10 years of life that ends up playing out later in life and how we do respond, especially to challenging situations. We follow certain models that we might have seen others in our lives, our parents and others, to the experiences that we have in our teens. They all factor into how we respond to challenges, disappointments, and so forth later on in life. So when it comes to that, applying that A strategy, that accept strategy, there's a few questions that we can ask ourselves to put that plan together. One of them is, what do you need to shed? What do you need to let go of? And if we think about that, and let me invite all of you who are watching to do the same thing and even write it down. What do you need to let go of? In business, sometimes it might be a certain pattern of time management. In working with clients, sometimes it's important to shed certain expectations. Maybe even a client that isn't the best match. If you're really going to seek the kind of growth that you're looking for, it's especially challenging now, but think of those things, and it could come from so many different places. What do you need to shed? And then the answers to that question can be a very practical addition to your plan. Just curious, what are your thoughts on that, Michael?
Yeah, yeah, it's definitely a great concept. And Yeah, a lot that sort of gets the idea of addition through subtraction. That there
Yeah.
can often be, because sometimes, someone lose a client, they're like, oh, I lost a client. And then they realize, I didn't really lose a client. I lost a headache that paid me, but I
It can
lost a
be.
headache, suddenly getting rid of that client, or, you lose an employee. There might be an employee on your team who's everyone can grow by them being somewhere else.
Going back to that point earlier on in this hour, if we are seeking to free ourselves from the change exhaustion, the frustration, all the challenges that come along with how change can challenge everything, then answering that question, yes, it might be eliminating a headache, but also it's what you gain. Here's another way of looking at those consequences. You gain freedom to pursue a client that is a better match. And conversely, there's another question to ponder and answer, and it is, what do I need to embrace? And by that, I mean, it's worthwhile in the planning process. And this is often done, certainly in the course of doing a SWOT analysis, thinking in terms of where's the goodness? What do I need to reinforce? What do I need to acknowledge and even sort of really embrace to help strengthen the core parts of the plan for setting the stage to make the decisions about what strategies and tactics to achieve as you move forward. So on one hand, what do I need to wrap my head and my arms and my heart around? What do I need to shed? It's part of that acceptance or accepting strategy.
Makes a lot of sense. Yeah. And in terms of the accepting and getting into what you're saying with expectations is, tying back to something you were saying, that oftentimes we're not accepting things as they are. And that's where the frustration occurs. And because we're not accepting them, we're not making plans for them. I think there's a lot of denial in March last year that the science was pretty clear for anyone who was paying close attention. This was going to be a long haul thing. It was going to be months, possibly years. It wasn't going to be 2 weeks or 4 weeks or anything silly like that. But people didn't want to accept that things just changed and they're going to be really different for a really long time. And so they denied it. And because they denied it, they couldn't start responding to it until they accepted it. So some people took a month, 2 months before they accepted, we're going to be in a quarantine for a number of months. Oh, okay. And of course, now you're 2 months in, you've used 2 months of resources and it's a challenge. But the quarantine's not the only example. It's just the most universal one. But that, not accepting, and, this happens in life too. You lose the job. And for 6 months, you're still thinking about, well, how could maybe if I hadn't said this, or what if he hadn't done that? What if I'd filled that report out? Maybe I should sue. Oh, maybe I can go back. Maybe they can give it back to me. You're still living back there because you haven't accepted what you left. And as soon as you accept it, there's all kinds of opportunities out there, but you need to accept where you're not. And, in sales, I had this when I was doing sales. You lose a deal and you get to the next presentation and you finish the next presentation, you're still thinking about the one you lost. And of course, you lost the next one too because your head wasn't in it. Because You're still focused on the one, because you can't accept, but that was such a good client. What? How could they not? And whereas if you can just accept, be like, well, guess that's not one for me. Next.
I believe it was Henry Ford who once said, don't look back unless you're planning to go that way. I've done it. I've, like we all have. I think in certain industries, the average tenure of any particular role, especially when it comes to marketing and sales, I believe it's only about 2.5 years.
Yeah.
So it's commonplace. And there's other one of the things I discovered, and the more I've researched this, I found it to be something that's explained with the way our brains work, neuroplasticity, is that when there is that trigger, such as you were mentioning earlier, and we're frustrated by it, that means it struck a nerve, something that is really upsetting to something within us. So one of the things that I found to be especially helpful is to actually go ahead and spend time with it. Sit down, make time, have a pad of paper, or perhaps if you do journaling, and write down your thoughts about it. When I do that, I got to say, virtually every time I do that, and I don't do it often enough, sometimes it's once or twice a week, sometimes I skip a week, but it's cathartic.
Mm-hmm.
And it helps the mind both take those jumbled thoughts. When we write them down, they become more organized and more manageable,
Mm-hmm.
and it provides clarity. So for those of you who might be experiencing any kind of frustration, or something is really eating at you, gnawing at you that you can't let go, join me and write down what it is that is so irritating about it. What is it? Go ahead and look more insightful into yourself. What is it that's striking a nerve there? And this is one of the reasons why on Wednesdays I've got the complimentary Zoom meeting at 1 o'clock Eastern time called Now What Do I Do? It's a group that comes together for a combination of networking, as well as everyone brings a question, and everyone does participate in a brainstorming exercise to offer what their experience can contribute to answering those questions. So everyone walks away with new contacts, as well as some new steps to move forward as they're seeking to plan to be their best.
Hey, so that's Wednesdays at 1 o'clock?
Yes, Wednesdays at 1 o'clock. If you click on, actually, yes, right at the homepage, scroll down, you'll see a couple of videos, as well as a link to exactly that. Now, what do I do? And it's complimentary, and generally just under an hour. And the people who attend this, most of them are small to mid-sized business leaders, and a fantastic group of people.
I'll check that out myself. Yeah, and I love the concept kind of looking into it, because it's true with a lot of unpleasant things. If you try to avoid them, they get worse. I've actually heard about a technique for dealing with physical pain, whether it's tooth pain, elbow, whatever. Is because when you have pain, your brain tries to avoid it, try to look somewhere else or think somewhere else, and then it's sort of there. But an interesting exercise is try to focus your full attention on the pain. Because what you discover is, if you want to look at something, if I want to look at you on the screen, then my eyes will see you, and my eyes know where to track, and there's a certain area that is your face. If you try to focus your brain focus on the pain, there isn't a location. So it's almost like instead of you running away from it, it starts running away from you. And you're thinking, okay, my elbow hurts. Well, is it at the tip of my elbow? It's not quite the tip. All right, let me focus a little further in, maybe in the bone. Do I feel it? No, I don't feel it there either. Do I feel it on the inside? No, it's not quite on the inside. Do I feel it on the outside? And eventually, you have focused your mind on every part of that joint and can't find it. So there's still pain, but your brain's thinking, well, I've looked at it exhaustively and I can't find it. So obviously, it can't be that real. And it's a really a powerful technique to kind of dive into that. And the same thing happens with frustration. If you're just saying, I've got frustration, but if you go to write it down, journal, email someone, whatever, and especially if you journal it as if you're writing to somebody and be like, Rick, let me tell you why I'm frustrated. And then you get to the end of writing it and you go back and read it, you're like, well, that's not anything. What am I so frustrated about? Cat litter? What? That's nothing. And you suddenly realize that it was one little splinter that was just left to fester. And once you actually look closely at it, you're like, oh, that's not and I'm sure this happened to you, that you go through the process and you realize, I'm frustrated my desk is messy and I could clean this in 5 minutes. And you spend 5 minutes cleaning the desk and you're like, oh, my problem's solved. Right. I did it 6 weeks ago.
Yes, exactly. That pain example is really good. When I was going through in the years, I was going through the 4th, 5th, and 6th operation on my left knee, and the pain management I was going through. One particular person I was meeting with on a regular basis, thinking through strategies on this, and she pointed out, every time you refer to your knee, you say the knee. I had actually, in a way, disassociated myself from the knee. And so it's interesting to think about the words that we use in our own mind, or sometimes we'll even say them, which reveal some of these issues. So that's when I really was learning the value of, just as you're describing, writing things down and organizing the thoughts and providing some perspective and practical solutions to navigate it all.
Yeah, that's some really good stuff. So I know it is still early. You're joining us again in May for Conference 21, right?
I'm so looking forward to it.
Awesome. Okay. If I'd been planning ahead better, I would check the list so I didn't have to ask that question. But so do you have a plan for what you're talking about yet, or is that still under development?
It's a little bit under development. I'm thinking that I'm going to do two things. I might go a little bit deeper into a few more examples of how to navigate the challenging aspects of the pandemic, because it's still going on. And part of what's happening is that, just to the point of one of those quotes, not just waves of more possible infections, but even the wave and the changes that come along with opening up is already starting to, and I don't think I'm understating it by saying it's wreaking havoc with some people. For example, I know of a number of teachers who are actually seeing an increased amount of stress, knowing that more students are coming back into the classroom. And to deal with that change, not only are there more changes that come along, but one of the both good and challenging aspects of navigating it is that even more needs to change in terms of how we're responding to it. So in effect, I'll drill a little bit deeper into some of this, but I'm also going to see what is especially resonating with people. I'm always trying to have a pulse on certainly my clients and people in my world of what do they need right now. So I might be particularly responsive to finding out what people need at the time. And just curious, Michael, do you have any kind of mechanism in place where people can give you feedback that say, I want to attend this, but here's what I'm hoping to get from it?
I don't currently have that in place because I haven't figured out a good way to bend the technology to my will in that fashion.
I wonder if do you have a Facebook group? I know I'm a member.
Yes. So we do have the Facebook, the Conference 21 discussion group. And I could certainly send out a survey. So we send out surveys after the event. I could certainly send out surveys before the event to speakers and attendees, because really, as I explained to someone else, speakers 7/8 of the time are attendees.
Yes.
1/8 of the time you're speaking, and the other 7/8 you're attending.
Yes.
And some of the best connections were among speaker to speaker connected, as peer to peer. And something else I wanted to mention is in the February event, we did it all webinar style. So you're up on stage, everyone's watching, but there is a seminar mode. It has a limit of 16 people per room, but it's like a Zoom. Everyone's in there together. So I am going to be. I meant to put that out in the initial application and forgot. But there's going to be a follow-up questionnaire about would you like webinar style or seminar style? And because I know a lot of our speakers, first thing they did was, who wants to come up on stage with me? And really, wanted something more engaging. So that's going to be an option for anyone who wants to do that.
I found out a long time ago, so much goodness comes from listening to people who are going to be attending the program beforehand. Often, this happens a tremendous amount, actually. Clients will bring me in to put on a program, and I'll do as part of the entire scope of work some pre-engagement, both get an assessment, but also an assessment of needs from the people who are attending. And there's often more insight in terms of how I can add value by the feedback I get from the attendees, even
making a note,
days, but even weeks before. And then there's so all that pre-event engagement provides the opportunity for that workshop or meeting or working session to be far more productive. And it contributes even to what we do in the post-event engagement and how the work that we do to make sure everything is being applied is to the optimal point.
That makes a lot of sense. Yes. I'm going to do that. I'm going to make a survey for that. So,
excellent.
And of course, we are going to have the networking events, which I've not been doing the best job of promoting those events to people. But actually, the next networking event is going to be, let me find my calendar here. I think it's going to be, Monday the 5th at 7 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time.
Excellent. I will be there.
Okay, yeah. So it's the first Monday at 7 and the third Friday at noon. I think it's noon. But I'll be emailing that out. Of course, that's for ticket holders only. So anyone who is a ticket holder or speaker, I will be putting that out there. And for all the speakers, it'll be in the virtual green room, because I did hear my speakers who said too many emails. Put it all in one place so I can just find it when I want to. So I did figure out how to manhandle technology into doing that. So
what's up with that? What do they mean? Too many emails? Who's getting too many emails?
I think without having I can tell you what they're saying is having a lot of emails is an issue as long as there's someplace you can go to find everything. Because the worst is, which of these 32 emails is the thing I need in? Where's the link? Is it here? No. Is it here? No. Is it here? No. Is it here? So if you just search for my email address in your email, then there's going to be 70 emails, and somewhere in there is that link you need. So it's all going to be at one speaker only location for everything the speakers need. And then with the website, we've got, if I could turn my chair the right way, there we go. Black Dragon Marketing, Tarletta Williams, who was one of our speakers in February and will be speaking again. She's actually partnering with us to create a bigger, better website, which will make it easier for folks to be able to find what they're looking for. There's going to be tags on all the presentations. So you can click the mindset tag and it'll show you all the mindset talks. And when they're happening, you'll be able to click on the schedule and it'll take you to the talk. So it'll be much easier, because I think most of our speakers just kind of got to the hour and then wandered from room to room to see which one they like best, which, works, but it's nice to be able to plan ahead a little better and figure out what's what. And of course, that's why we're doing things like the roundtables. Yeah. So people can see Rick talk about what he's talking about and be like, I want more of that. I want to see more Rick. I'm going to go see his talk, or, whoever else.
Thank you, Michael. And everyone, I hope you'll join us. I'll look forward to seeing you there. And Michael, I just want to say, you've started Conference 21. Your entrepreneurial spirit and your foresight to be proactive about these good ideas that you've got, it's wonderful to see. And I'm so thankful to be a part of it.
Yep. And I'm so glad. What's been so exciting for me is the caliber of people we've brought in. I shared on my Facebook page, I was just watching the TEDx talk of one of our speaker applicants. And, that's what he said. Here's my TEDx talk with my application. I'm like, you're in. But just the caliber, amazing people. When I first put this out there, I didn't know, I had any idea what I was going to get. And when I started going through the applications of the people who applied and found these amazing, I don't say world class. You'd think of Gary Vaynerchuk and Tony Robbins. We don't have that level, but the high level accessible people. Like Rick, you, for example, have a lot to offer, a lot of value, but somebody can get you on a phone call. You see Grant Cardone speak, you're not going to get him on a 30-minute phone call. I mean, you can, but you're going to pay $5,000 for the privilege. Whereas the kind of people we have as speakers, they are people who are, a 30-minute phone call could be tremendously valuable, but they're accessible. They're not, world famous people who cost $100,000 to get on your stage, and their low cost entry level program is only $5,000. We have much more accessible people, and that's what I really want, is something where you can go to the conference, make some connections, and really change the trajectory of your life and your business because you met that speaker or even that attendee, developed a relationship, maybe joined their program, maybe hired them as a coach, but it's something where that is possible.
Exactly. Now, I did just send you a link if anyone wants to attend, just as a reminder. It's a complimentary 1 hour every Wednesday afternoon. Now
accessible.
Now what I do, part of my mission and my purpose is to be accessible.
Awesome.
Mission to help people learn something that is only taught. It is something learned, and I've had the privilege of being able to learn this through working with hundreds of clients, having ups and downs in my professional career, as well as life experiences, from the 7 knee surgeries, the loss of a child, the day he was born, and more, that I found that there's a universal set of strategies that help us navigate change, whether it's business or professional or personal. and I'm eager to share as much as I can. And this is a wonderful opportunity. Again, it's a brainstorming group, brainstorming session, as well as networking every Wednesday afternoon.
Very good. Yeah, I'll share that out just in case anyone didn't make it to the 50th minute of the roundtable. I'll share it out through our Conference 21 email as well. So thank you very much for being on the show. It's been great to have you on, as always. And I'm sure we'll see each other at networking events and all throughout the Conference 21 community. Thank you all you folks at home for watching. And of course, if you're watching this and saying, I've got something to share, go to speaker.conference21.com. Applications are open until April 15th. So thank you, Rick, and thank you all the folks at home.
Thank you, Michael. Thank you, everyone. Take good care.